How's that?
What's happening?
Not too much. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine.
Perfect.
You got two of those things sitting next to you now.
Yeah, quite crazy.
They need to make them smaller.
I agree, and lighter.
We'll give people a little bit of a chance here to jump on, and we'll get started. Hey, I've got your fishing team at Freedom. Can they use a 2-man ice shanty?
I would sure imagine so.
Okay. I donated one to Winneconne, and I've got one more left. If your team could use it, we'll get it in their hands.
Yeah, they could absolutely use it. It's just a matter of figuring out where to store it. So I'll have to talk to the other coaches and figure that out.
All right. Yeah, talk to them for me and let me know, and I can throw it in the back of the truck and bring it up
Sure.
one of these days.
Great.
How's your house coming?
The house? It's a work in progress. The whole upstairs is tore up right now. But I got one toilet back in, so at least we have that going for us.
There you go.
Yeah. Going to be a few more days yet, I think. So
who's doing?
It'll be nice when it's done, though. So that's good.
Are you doing all the work, or somebody else?
Oh no, I took the toilets and the trim off, and the guys are doing the flooring themselves. So they're doing the vinyl this week, and then next week they're going to do the carpet. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Super cool. What else has been going on?
We were up at the cabin all weekend. Had the kids catching critters again. So they got a skink this weekend, some snakes, a bunch of newts, bass, bluegills, perch. They were catching bass on tadpoles. They'd catch the tadpoles, put that on a hook, throw it out, and then catch the bass on them. So they were having a good time.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you? Bass I see, huh?
Just whacking white bass, man. Yep. Trying to thin out the herd.
Right.
You know, all these people that are so butthurt about these things. I don't know. But it really doesn't. You know, I don't know how many hundreds of years that people have been coming to the Wolf River and taking, just thousands of these fish every spring. And it just keeps getting better. I mean, honestly, the last 2 years, I don't know if I've ever seen so many fish, and not just like in one spot in the river. My normal spots this year that I've caught fish for the last, there's a few around, but it's pretty empty. But I found new spots that I've never seen fish before, and they are in there by the millions. I mean, it's from the mouth of the river all the way up past New London, Shiocton. We were out on Winnebago. We were catching them on the north end. We were catching them on the south end. They had a really good run in the Fox River by Eureka and Amaro again this year. I've talked to a lot of these old timers that have been doing it too, and everybody says that the numbers are quite a bit up from years past as far as what they've been seeing too. But not only that, the size. I mean, they're like 17, 18 inches. Wow. I mean, just monsters.
That makes it really fun.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's a lot of fun, and a lot of people putting some food in the freezer, that's for sure.
Yep. Good stuff.
Well, we can get started. I guess first things first, back-to-back champions. Now, how did you guys qualify for this year?
We actually got a bid for winning last year, so we didn't have to fish any series or side pot or anything this year, so, which was nice to have that.
So then going into next year, you guys will have the bid as well.
Correct.
Very good. Well, that's pretty exciting knowing that you get to go back. Where's it going to be next year? Have they announced it yet?
Yeah, it's going to be in, I think, June 20th through the 22nd or something like that. And it's going to be out in Pickstown, South Dakota on Oahe. So
Oh, Oahu's a fun place to
Missouri
fish
River.
too. Absolutely. That's some of my favorite type of fishing out there, man. Us river rats can do pretty well out there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We got a whole year to check it out and try to learn and kind of get my head wrapped around what I'm going to be up against this time. So definitely
I've
looking
got a
forward
lot
to it.
of I've got a lot of waypoints I can get you for out there.
That sounds great.
Just remind me, stay on top of me. I'll put them on a chip and I'll get them over to you when I drop the shack off.
Awesome.
So you guys go out to Lake Erie. How long did you guys pre-fish?
6 days of actual pre-fishing.
What were the conditions like when you guys were pre-fishing?
Every single day, the wind was a different direction. I feel like, you know, but like 10 to 15 or less. So nothing. There was no smaller craft advisories or any crazy winds during pre-fish at all. It was actually a really nice stretch of 6 days overall. So.
Gotcha. Some people is there any way you can get a little bit closer to your mic?
I can, yes.
Some guys that just made a comment here. Jason Strook.
How's
there
that?
we go.
Is that better?
Oh, way better. Yep.
Okay.
So you guys are out there pre-fishing. Now, when people think of Lake Erie, everybody thinks that it's a trolling game. And pretty much, if I'd have to take a guess, I'd say, 90% of the field were probably trolling?
I would say 70% from what we saw.
Okay.
There's actually more troller or jiggers than I expected to see.
So when you go out there and a guy wants to focus on jigging these fish over a big water like that, where do you even start? What are you looking for? How are you finding, bigger fish than what the guys are getting trolling? Or are you guys literally just fishing the same fish that the trollers are going after?
Well, to start out early in the week, we kind of tried to just look at the basin, look at the kind of the structure, look at the river mouths, and we just try to look at a variety of different things and just seeing where the bigger fish were. And it just seemed for us like early in the week we could catch 60 fish out in the basin, and all we would do is we would they call it high speed graphing, drive around at about 20 to 30 miles an hour and just watch the graph. And when we saw a bunch of fish, we'd just spin around and set the bomb on in and start looking for them and casting at them. And when we did that, we caught tons of fish, but 2 to 5 pounders were the bulk of them. Like I would say 80% of them. Anything over 5 pounds was a nice one, kind of out where we were fishing the suspended fish in the basin. And the thing with that is there was so many fish that even if you tried to cast at, say, a bigger mark that you saw, I mean, one would come out of nowhere and eat your bait before you could even a lot of times get it to that big fish. And then the other variable out there is there's always current. And there may be a surface current and there might be a current, 15 feet down, even going a different direction. So it was kind of difficult to land, especially those fish that were out in 50 feet and they say they were 20 to 35 down. It was really difficult to land your bait on their head because the current was doing one thing and they would be swimming another way, and then the wind's blowing you a different way. So it was just very difficult to get your lure presented to that specific fish. You could catch a lot of fish, like I said. I mean, we definitely caught way more fish when we were fishing deeper water on those big schools that we would just find with the high-speed graphing. But once we kind of looked to structure, we kind of stayed to our roots and fishing structure, and just knowing that for a 3-day tournament, we really wanted to be on fish that were relating to some sort of structure so that we thought we could, have a chance at catching them 3 days in a row. So ultimately we ended up going to a shoreline, just a big rock point. And it's not a spot on the spot. It was about a 2-mile long stretch where these bigger fish were kind of located for us. And you could just pull your boat around and use a live scope, pan around. And when you saw the big one, you could cast at it. And if they were active, they would eat it right away. So we dialed that in like the 3rd day of pre-fishing. And then we kind of expanded on that. And the other big thing that we noticed, so the fish that were out in the basin, there's bait balls of shad like everywhere. And these fish, you'd catch one and they're pooping all over the boat. You'd cut them up and they're full of shad, right? Um, but they weren't big fish. Then we'd find the fish that were more on the rocks. When you cut them open, they'd have either perch or white perch or even sheephead, young of the year, 8-inch long sheephead in their bellies. So they were eating much larger forage. And so we learned that early in the week, and it really helped us settle down and know that those fish weren't going to leave, because they were in there to eat the perch and the white perch and the sheephead. And there wasn't really much for bait fish in shallow, like the schools of bait that you would see out in the basin, the shad. So we definitely learned right away. We picked up on that they were eating bigger things, and that's why they were where they were.
Okay. And so in relative to, spawning grounds or, the rivers and stuff where they typically go, whereabouts, were you guys in relevance to that?
Yeah. So we were fishing by Cleveland. We were like, I don't know, maybe 3-4 miles west of Cleveland by a place called Fish Haven Point. And that's, part of when I studied for this tournament, I kind of knew that the biggest fish head east first, generally speaking. Obviously not all of them, but the biggest portion, same thing as Winnebago system. The females that spawn first and dump out of there first are usually your biggest fish. So with that and kind of in the back of our head, that's why we wanted to fish east of the takeoff to try to find the pot of the biggest ones that were migrating to the east. Because that's what they say the Lake Erie fish do, is they go to the western basin and they spawn, and then they spread out like fast. As soon as they're done spawning, they head east. Those females, and it doesn't matter if they're on the shoreline, if they're out in 60 feet of water, they just head east. So yeah, we knew we wanted to stay east, and we never fished west of Lorain, which was our takeoff location, the whole week. We kind of, just with our research, we knew we wanted to be east, and we knew we weren't going to have a ton of time to, with one boat to try to fish 50 miles of water. So we just focused on basically from Cleveland to Lorain and really learned that part of the lake.
Okay. How far of a run was that for you guys?
I think it was like 22 miles. So it wasn't too bad. The first day it was a little rough getting out there. The second day we could run full speed all the way out there. And then the second day on the way back in, she came up out of the west, and we went from going full speed to going about 15 miles per hour over big waves in the last like 20 minutes of the boat ride. So it can get gnarly in a hurry out there for sure.
I fished out there out of Cleveland. I think it was a RCL or an FLW. I don't even remember when that was, but that was the only day or the only time I've truthfully ever been scared in a boat. Is when and Tommy Scarless and I pre-fished together one day out there, and John Kuklinski were sitting at the cabin, and Tom came in late, and he didn't have much time to pre-fish, and we had one day really to kind of go out there, and they were already like 6 to 8 footers, and he's like, "You want to go?" I'm like, "Why not?" So we gave her, and it was stupid. We should have never even put the boat in the water. And by the time we were, they had small craft out, and by the time we got out, I think we got set up, and you could just tell that the wind was kicking up, and we were looking at like a 30-degree angle up in the air at our boards, and then we'd be looking down at them, and it's like, "Tommy, this is stupid, man." And we both put our life jackets on, and he did a heck of a job getting his boat back to shore. And when we got back, I think there were people waiting for us because I think they were getting ready to send the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
That's some gnarly water out there.
Yeah, it's like Winnebago waves on steroids out there. They're real close together, and they're punishing when they hit you. So yeah, It's nothing to mess with.
So you find these fish, and everybody thinks that Lake Erie fish. I haven't been out there for a few years, but that the fish are always going to be out deep, and like what you said, chasing big schools of bait and stuff around. What prompted you to go start looking for them shallower?
Well, the first 2 days we primarily fished like the basin fish, and we weren't catching, like, it was hard to get a 5-pounder, and we just it was so fun to catch them. But I mean, we're thinking we got to do something different because it wasn't like it was, one spot that we're getting the small ones. We stopped at like 10 different spots in the mud every time we'd mark fish, and we'd even try to high speed graph and only set the boat down when we saw bigger marks. And we'd go through those fish, and we still had a really hard time. You'd get, a 5 to 7 pounder here and there, but to get 6+ pounders in a day, we weren't able to do that. So that's kind of what prompted us to, hey, we're missing something, and looking back, I did talk to some of the guys that did well on basin fish, and what they said is that they were fishing the deep ones. They were actually using jigging wraps and things that were more bottom oriented. And some of those guys actually mentioned that those fish were eating perch too. So I'm thinking that's kind of a bigger fish pattern on Erie is being close to bottom, because I think the really big ones like to eat perch rather than the shad.
Sure.
We missed that. We tried to jig and wrap a little bit, but we never caught any big ones doing that. So we definitely missed that.
What when you figured this out, you're obviously doing the high speed graphing, which is very great to do, or it's a great tactic to do, especially up here on Green Bay and even out on Bago. When the fish get out in those mud flats, just to cruise around before you even start to fish. Were you guys seeing the schools of perch or the sheephead, or were you just finding those big marks for the walleyes?
Are you saying in the shallows or out in the basin?
Yeah. Yep. So when you guys were fishing shallow.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about the shallow thing. So the very first day we pre-fished, we actually drove right over the point that we ended up fishing for the tournament, and we high speed graphed it, and we never set the boat down because we didn't mark anything. We drove over it for, I don't know, a minute or two, and we didn't mark them. So we just kind of, the very first day, we went right back out to the basin and kept catching fish, and we never fished it, or we never even set the trolling motor in to look with the live scope. Well, then later in pre-fish, we ended up fishing, it's called Avon Point. It's about 10 miles to the west, and we fished that point, and we caught walleyes as shallow as like 14 feet of water. And we had some 6 and 7 pounders on there as well, up shallow. So after doing that, we spent the whole day on that, and we definitely noticed that there was a bigger class of fish shallow. So then, just kind of talking about it that night, I'm like, we got to go back over to that point we never fished because it's further east. So theoretically, the bigger fish should be further east, and it was the same type of structure. So that's what we did the next day, and it was funny because it was a northeast wind, and we were going to Cleveland, and that's kind of as far as we wanted to go for the tournament because we knew it was going to be windy for the tournament. And Scott said on the way over there, he's like, "I hope we suck today. I hope we don't get him over here because I want to stay closer to the launch." And he said that, and I'm like, okay, like I understand why you're saying that. Well, it didn't take us an hour and a half, and we had an 8 pounder in the boat, and it's like, okay. And then we kind of, we had the perfect wind. It was blowing right in on there, and those fish were feeding that day with the northeast wind, and we probably had about 40 pounds that day pre-fishing, and without, going over anything twice, just kind of learning the area. And it's like, okay, maybe this is going to work. These fish are definitely better size than the ones that were on Avon Point, at least the ones that we had found over there. So then the next day we went over there again and kind of fine-tuned it. And like I said, we made it a 2 mile long wide area where these bigger ones were kind of hanging out. So.
Well, let's, you guys were throwing the new finisher from Berkeley, right?
Yes. And this right here, the blue and chrome one is the one that Scott was using when it was sunny, right? The number 9, that's the biggest one they make. And what it was, he would throw it, and he would let it free fall on the fish. You could see it on the live scope, and it was important that it came down like right over their head. If you missed them, like you could sometimes miss 3 to 5 feet past them and kind of hop it in front of them, and they would still react to it. But like the best was to get it to drop right over their head, and then they would like react to it, and you could just tell they'd react to it on the live scope. And then once they did that, he was just mixing in some small hops and then a bigger hop with the free fall. And he just figured out that those little hops, every time this bait falls, it like twists in the water, right? And then it twists on its side, and then it comes back straight. And the second it comes back straight, that chrome flashes. And if they're tracking it and it flashes in their face, that was just a trigger for them to eat it. So when it was sunny, that was the key. And then when it was cloudy, he would switch to the plain white one, which doesn't have any flash. Just, it doesn't really look that good in the water because it's just like a white blob, right? It's nothing flashy, nothing special. But that white one, I mean, they loved that when it was cloudy out or right away in the morning before the sun really got up high in the sky.
And what were you doing? Just netting fish for him?
For the tournament, pretty much. Yeah. So just the way we were fishing, so he was pulling the boat with the trolling motor, and then he would turn the trolling motor back and forth while he was pulling the boat forward. So I'm in the back trying to run a pole-mounted live scope. He's mounted on the trolling motor, and he's pulling us 2 to 3 miles an hour searching for fish. So by the time I would see the fish, I'd have my live scope kind of pointed towards the front of the boat. I'd see the fish. I'd be about ready to cast at it, and all of a sudden I'd see his bait going down to the fish already.
Right. Son of a bitch.
Yeah, he's already got that one. And then about 20 seconds later, I got him, and it's like, so then I was netman again. And then with culling, it actually worked out good because I was in the back weighing the fish, making sure we were throwing the right one back, and basically playing cull master back there. So I got all the fish in the net, but the hardest one was actually the last one, the 30-incher. It came up, and just the way the wind was blowing us, the fish was underneath the boat, and it was angled down towards the trolling motor, right? And he's fighting it, and it's coming up, and I cannot get a good angle on it, and the fish is coming, like, the head is coming up, and it's swimming away from the boat. And I get the fish in the hoop of the net, and it just would not fall into the net. I shook it, and I did everything I could, and it was just huge. It was the biggest walleye we've seen all week, and it would not fall in the net. And he's yelling at me, "Get it!" And I mean, that was the most stress I had the whole week, quite honestly, because we had a relaxing week. It was fun. We didn't get too worked up about anything. We found him early enough in the week where we were just kind of like, all right, like, just so different from last year. Last year, the emotions every day were just, we didn't sleep, or at least I didn't sleep last year. Every night it was thinking about all the what ifs and what to do if this happens. And this tournament, like, I had a little bit of that, but it just, I don't know. It just wasn't as stressful, I guess. We just had more confidence that those fish, we could catch those fish. Cause we were like I said, we were catching 25 to 60 a day, every day that we were out there. So, and I knew Scott was going to catch him one way or the other. So he does not stop. Like, when he gets in a groove, you better watch out, because it's fun to watch. I'll tell you that. And that's what it was for this tournament. Just jigging them up left and right.
So what was plan B?
So plan B was Avon Point, if it came down to that. And that's the one thing we were worried about. On the second day, we had a south wind. It blew from like midnight until takeoff, about 15 out of the south. So we were a little worried, just knowing how Lake Michigan flips with a west wind. We get the cold water and clear water that gets sucked in. We just weren't sure if Lake Erie would roll that clear, cold water right up to the shoreline or not. So we were a little worried about that. And when we got there on the second day, it had cleared up a little bit, but I could see the prop, but not much past that. So I'm like, that's what you want, really. So we got lucky that it stayed as dirty as it did with that wind.
Nice.
So, and I don't know if those fish would have left if it got clean, just because they were eating the perch, but they probably wouldn't be able to catch a perch as well in super clear water. So maybe they would have pulled out of there.
Sure. So you go in, you have a okay week pre-fishing. What did you guys set up as far as, we need this weight, we need this size fish? What were your predictions, and what were you guys looking for?
I think we were sort of going for, we wanted 40 pounds a day. But, it was, how's it going, buddy? It was
Xander, he says hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
He's getting ready for bed.
Mine probably are too. They wanted to be down here with me. I'm like, no, sorry, kids. Not tonight. But yeah,
So
we didn't really have a weight per se. I mean, we were shooting for 40. We knew it was possible in our area, but it was what it was. You know, we figured we could probably get 40 both days, but then, you know, the first day we caught plenty of fish, but we just didn't really get that 9-pound kicker that we were looking for. We had a lot of them, you know, 6.8 to 7.8 pound fish. So I think we did have one that was 8.8, but we just seemed like if you fish that area, if you caught enough of them, you were going to get an 8+ pounder. So, and then the second day, I mean, the size was just a little better on average. Like the 6.8s were like 7.5s. You know, they're all kind of just a little bit bigger on the second day for whatever reason. And then on the second day, we did get a 30.5 that was like 10.3 pounds. So that kind of that's how we had 42 pounds. We finally got one big one. So.
And that's what you need. I mean, those tournaments out there,
yep.
I could remember, you know, all the PWT, FLW, RCL days, and it was always, you know, that just ounces that separated everything, unless you had that one team or that's two teams that got those 2 or 3 big kickers, and that's what separates those fields out there. Because, man, the fishery is incredible. I mean, speak on that. What did you guys see when you were out there?
I mean, so picture, it's like flip-flop. It's an inverse of Winnebago, right? So Winnebago, you go out in the mud, and if you catch, or say you look at with your live scope at 20 fish, if you look at 20 random fish, some random spot in the mud on Winnebago, probably 15 of them are going to be sheephead, 3 are going to be white bass, and 2 are going to be walleyes or something like that, right? Lake Erie is the opposite. If there's 30 fish in front of you, 28 of them are walleyes. I mean, it's crazy. Everywhere you go that there's fish, you cast and you catch them and they're walleyes. I mean, I've never seen that, you know, and we were just stopping in wherever, like there's no rhyme or reason to it. And I mean, it just seemed like they're everywhere. They're definitely not everywhere, but I mean, once you got out in the basin, just it seemed like where we were from 30 feet of water out to about 50 feet of water. They were thick. They were kind of relating to that shore as they were progressing to the east. Seemed like they wanted to be in 50 feet of water or less. That's where the most fish were. There was fish out in 60 and deeper, but the deeper you went, the less fish you marked. So.
Sure. Now I can remember the last time I went out and fished Cleveland. I don't remember what time of the year it was, but did you guys run into any of those rainbows at all?
We sure did. Yeah, that day we went shallow on Avon Point, and on the one side of Avon Point, the water was like 58.5 and dingy, and on the other side, it was 52.5 and pretty clear. Well, we ended up fishing in that colder water, and we caught 3 steelhead and lost one in about, 3 hours of fishing. And how we were catching them was really cool. We got some on the finisher, some on just a jig and plastic. But we were actually just normal fishing, casting at fish on live scope, and then we'd hear something. I'd look up and I'd see a little splash on the surface, and I would, as fast as I could, crank up and cast over there and just start working the plastic or the finisher right on the surface. And within seconds, you had them on. Talk about fun.
My God, they're so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. And they're stocky out there. They're short and stout. They jump, and it was fun. That was definitely fun.
We were trolling, and the worst part about trying to get to the walleyes was getting through those rainbows or through the steelhead. We couldn't get through them fast enough. You know, we were trying to put, really heavy weights on just to get your baits down, because as you'd be letting stuff out, even on dipsies, you'd start letting your dipsy out, and all of a sudden, bam, and zzz, and gone. I mean, when you get into a bite like that where you don't know what you're going to get between big walleyes or steelhead, it's not what you want, but as far as fun goes, I don't think there's much more a guy can do, short of catching white bass, of course.
Right. Yeah. Steelhead makes me grin every time. I love catching steelhead, whether it's in the tributaries or walleye fishing. They are just fun. So.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about a setup. What does a guy need to fish, the finisher? What rod, line?
Yeah.
Um,
So I figured I would grab it. So I was throwing the purple finisher. That was the one I was doing best with. But I was throwing it on an Abu Garcia 7-foot medium Veritas. And I've always ran this rod for, I don't know, 7-8 years now. I've been running these Veritas rods. And I like the 7-foot medium for the like jig and wrap shiver minnow and these finishers. And I'll go like with hair jigs, I'll use the 7-foot medium light. And I'll throw the depth jig on a 7-foot medium light as well, just because that softer tip with those depth jigs. That was another bait that I was using during pre-fish that I was catching quite a few fish on, which is basically an Erie deer. You're just slow rolling a crawler harness. And the nice thing with live scope with that, I could cast it and I could drop it right on the fish's head and slowly pull it away from them and let them track it, and then know when they're going to eat it, so then not to set the hook on them, because you have to really let them eat it for like 3 seconds on those depth jigs. And I've hated that bait since it came out, because every time I'd use it, I'd take it up on Green Bay, and I never would let them eat it. I would feel them nip it, and I would set the hook and miss like every fish, right? So it was good to take it to Erie and really cast it, because there's a bunch of fish, and watch how they track it, and eventually they latch onto it, and then you basically just, instead of setting the hook, I would just kind of pull forward and just put weight onto the rod tip and just start cranking. And that was how I was catching them on that. But back to the setup, I was using actually this, a lot of guys use Berkley Fireline. I was using this, it's called Berkley X9, and it's just a little smoother, rounder line for if you're casting open water. It's not as, it doesn't have the abrasion resistance as say your Fireline does. So if you're fishing it by a lot of rocks and stuff, or in really thick cover or docks, it's probably not the best. But for open water, it's silky smooth. It casts a long ways. It has this nice chartreuse color that I like, the high vis, and I haven't had any issues with it. So it's it's real soft for tying knots. You can tie knots with it real fast because it's so soft. So sure. I've fallen in love with that line over the last year. And then for my leader, we were using 15-pound Seagar Invisex, and that stuff has been bulletproof for me for years. I picked that up, same thing, probably 8-10 years ago, and I haven't put another fluorocarbon on. It's Invisex, whether it's anywhere from 6-pound to 15-pound, depending on what I'm fishing for. I'll use even 4 pounds sometimes if I'm pan fishing. I'll use that on my perch rods. But I mean, that stuff, even the 6-pound stuff, I put it on my ice fishing stuff for steelhead fishing, and I'll catch 10-pound steelhead through the ice on 6-pound Seagar. I mean, it is solid. So yep. So that was really what we were throwing. I was using like an 8-foot leader just with the high vis line. That seemed to work good. And then if you had to retire or whatever, you had enough line there where I was checking my line. We weren't fishing on bottom, so that really wasn't much of an issue. But yeah, it was, with that finisher, we were able to fish suspended fish. And same thing with the depth jig. You needed something that you could hang up in the water that you could get them to see, and then you could take it away from them and get them to chase it. Where like a jig and wrap, a shiver minnow, a hair jig, a blade bait, all the things that we like to use on Green Bay are more bottom oriented baits, right? So this finisher, it just allowed us to fish, some of these fish were 12 feet down in 25, 30 feet of water, and you could work that finisher right over the top of them. And then too, a lot of times the trigger was even a free fall. Like you get them to chase it up and then you just free fall it and they chase it right down and grab it. And you wouldn't think they could catch up to it because it's a 3/4 ounce bait, but they were, So when they want to eat
those bigger walleyes are fast.
They're quick. Yep. So.
And when they pin it down to the bottom, yeah, I've sat and watched that even out on Winnebago, even some of the smaller fish too, when they're fishing hair jigs, how much they chase those things. And as soon as that thing hits the bottom, it's almost like they wait for it to hit the bottom before they, just pin it down there and attack it.
Yep.
So, you guys are using live scope. What is your thoughts on, okay, so, there's all this talk about banning it and, tournament wise, or, the the whole conservation Congress, trying to, put a ban on it and whatnot. What's your opinion? I mean, honest opinion.
When it first came out, I was a little like, I don't know. I thought it was cool. I didn't have it. And I'm like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem fair. And then I used it one day, and ever since then, I've been hooked on it. I can definitely see like some laws having to go into place, say a 200 or less acre lake, lowering bag limits. Just because of the technology, these smaller lakes are going to feel are going to be hurt the most by it.
Yep.
I mean, it's no different than anything else. I mean, if you're greedy and you want to go catch your limit every day, of course it's going to be easier when you can see 100 feet all the way around your boat in real time with live scope versus, side imaging or even, 360. I mean, there's been other good technology out there, but now just the forward facing stuff, just how it's in real time and you can see your bait fall to the fish, how the fish reacts to it. I mean, it's definitely changed how I fish. It's changed how I understand fish. Just you learn so much more about a fish, and at the end of the day, that's what I love. I love to learn to figure out the fish. Every time I'm in a tournament, whether it's a tournament or not, like it's for me, fishing's a puzzle, right? And I just want to put all the pieces to the puzzle together. Do I like doing board puzzles? No, I hate it. I like real life puzzles, and walleyes are consistently the hardest fish to figure out on a day-to-day basis, and that's why I love chasing them. I love putting the puzzle together. So it was just fun to go to a different body of water completely and do something new with a new bait. But same thing, forward facing sonar, and let the fish teach you, and listen to what the fish are telling you. And that's why, like when we were keeping 8-pounders and cutting them up on Erie, I would never do that anywhere else, right? But
right.
that first day we caught them big ones, we had to cut them up, right? And we actually probably didn't have to cut them up because when we pulled them out of the live well, there was perch laying in the bottom of the live well as well. So they were puking them up. They were in their stomachs. But it came real apparent to us right then and there that, hey, we found something. These fish are eating big forage. That's the only other thing we never really did that I kind of regret. I would have liked to throw in, like a big Kitech paddle tail or something through these fish, like a 4.8 or something, something pretty big, and just see how they would have reacted to a big bait. Because obviously they are eating big stuff. So next time.
I've got into, I work with all these different bass companies and, doing some repping and stuff like that. And I picked up, I don't know, 15, 20 big giant swim baits like they use for these big bass out in California. And almost like musky style stuff, right? And yep. We were up on the bay last year throwing these things. And I'm telling you what, that's where it's at, man. When these fish are hungry, those big swim baits, they have no problem just going up and they T-bone them, they inhale them. There's no little, there's a bite.
Right?
It's kabam!
Yep, that's one thing with the big bait. If they're going at it, they're going to go at it. There's no nipping or there's no swimming up to look at it. If once they decide they're eating it, they're eating it. So,
yep.
Absolutely.
Totally different way of looking at walleye fishing. I think in the last, I'd say 5 to 7 years, you're seeing a lot more of that artificial big bait, big fish style of fishing that, I don't think anybody was really doing it 20 years ago. I mean, if they were, I surely was not paying attention. I could remember going, oh boy, it's got to be close to 15, 17 years ago. I fished with Gary Parsons. It was a Berkeley Walleye Cup. It was like a pro-am type thing, invite only thing. We were on the Missouri River, and we were catching a lot of fish. But we're throwing 3-inch little paddle tails and stuff like that.
Yep.
And you look at what we're throwing now, and the how everything's kind of evolved into these big giant baits. And I can only imagine, and if we would have had what we had 20 years ago, how much more we would be progressing. Because what's next? I mean, we're seeing and learning more about these fish with forward-facing sonar than anything a guy could ever do. I mean, you could go down there and watch them with underwater cameras and all that, but you're not seeing, how these fish are reacting to baits. And this goes, with the bass guys too, talking to like Jason Shakurit and Jay Shakurit, and how it's changed how everybody is fishing. And I kind of look at it as when underwater cameras first came out, we've been using flashers for years, and you can, follow a flasher and kind of learn. But then when you actually watch it on a screen to see how these fish come up and maybe mouth a bait, hold it for a second, and then take another bite, and that's when you want to set the hook. And you start putting two and two together, and okay, I'm watching them on my flasher, I'm watching them on my camera. Now I can get rid of the camera because I know exactly what they're doing just by watching the flasher.
Exactly.
Do you think that's going to be the case with forward-facing sonar? Or, I mean, the biggest thing with that is, sure, we can find them with our side imaging or regular 2D, but when you're fishing these suspended fish, it seems like without forward-facing, you're pretty much screwed.
Yeah. So I mean, for the fish we were fishing for this Erie tournament, they were scattered, right? So we were pulling the boat around 2 to 3 miles an hour, and you would go 100 yards until you'd find a couple, right? So if you were just blind casting, if you were just making drifts through that, even if you happen to find that area, that 300-yard area where these big ones were, and you were just fan casting and drifting, I would be shocked if you would have caught 5 walleyes all day, right? Because it was such a detailed thing. You had to have that bait within, I would say, within 2 feet of those fish for them to even react to it. And since they were suspended, say they're only 10 feet down, you had to cast and you had to stop that bait on their head and get them to react to it. So without it, we would have never been able to present our baits to those fish. Trolling, yes, but jigging, no. There would have been no chance because they weren't numerous enough where you could just get lucky casting, right? And they weren't all at 10 feet down. They weren't all at 12 feet down. There was fish at 10, there was fish at 18 down, and everywhere in between. And just the density of the fish, they were just so scattered, right? Around here, we think of schools of walleyes. A lot of times on the bay, they'll be in 10 to 20 fish schools, one school in like a big ball of walleyes, and they're all swimming together. Whereas Lake Erie, they don't do that. At least they weren't doing that in May when we were there. They're just in real loose schools, and there's, every now and again you'll see a pair of twins, I call them, where there's 2 swimming side by side. And obviously when you saw that, one of them almost always bit. So those fish were kind of together, and they were kind of moving faster and looking for food together. But the bulk of them were by themselves. They would be doing their own thing, and there would be, fish in the area, but it's not like they were, in any big schools at all. And if you did, like we did find walleyes in schools close to bottom, and they were 16 to 22 inches. If you saw that and you caught one, that was never big fish doing that. The big ones that, and I kind of relate it to like big perch too. Like I love going to Lake Gogebic up in the UP, and there's huge perch in there, but you can't go to one weed bed and pluck out 15, 12-inch perch, right? That you catch one, you almost have to move the boat. You get maybe 2 or 3 out of one spot, one little weed patch, and you have to move, because that's what those big ones do. They're not in, like a 6-inch perch or in schools by the 1,000, right? And as they get bigger, they turn into, they don't have predators anymore, very select few predators, and they become kind of free ranging and in real small schools. So, and I feel like it's the same way with walleyes. The bigger they get, they don't want to be around a ton of fish, especially younger fish that are more aggressive and, eager to chase bait. They don't want to be around that. They kind of want to do their own thing, be left alone, and they eat different things too. So, it was cool to learn that. I've kind of always suspected that with walleyes, but then this week on Erie, I really learned a lot of that type of stuff with, they have different comfort zones, they have different standards of living than the little ones do. So.
Sure. Steve had asked, are you tying to a snap or tying directly?
We were tying these all directly. No snap at all. And I think I did try early in the week with the snap, and I mean, it would fall up a little bit, but I mean, I didn't need to change colors. So I think I had 3 different rods at 3 different finishers on. So I'd have the white one, the purple one, and then a different one. And I would just switch rods rather than, since I already had them tied on. So, and that's the beauty of these baits. So they don't follow up very often. If you throw a blade bait, you throw jig and rapalas, shiver minnows in the summer, they're going to follow up on you. It might be every 10 casts, every 20 casts. Well, these things, it would be lucky if it was every 50 casts where it finally, you'd be working it and then all of a sudden you give it a big rip and then you'd feel it didn't feel right and you'd bring it in and it would be around the front hook. But I mean, they cast true and they don't hardly ever follow up. And I think it's because the actual eye where they're tied on is so far forward.
Yep.
So
yeah, I've been playing around with them just out on Winnebago. I've caught a couple small ones, haven't really done real well on them. The thing with Winnebago versus Green Bay, I have still to this day, I don't think I've ever caught a blade or a walleye on a blade bait on Winnebago.
yeah.
Where Green Bay, we smoke them out there.
Mm-hmm.
These fish are just a little bit different on Bago.
Yeah.
A lot of hair jigs and
they like
smaller
tackle.
tackle.
I'll tell you that. Yep.
Yes, they do.
And they do like a shiver minnow or a jig and wrap too a lot of times.
Yep, but those like smaller profile baits. Yeah. I do well with that, but haven't really dialed them in yet with the finisher. So how long of casts were you guys making?
Yeah, well, so early in the week we were casting 80 feet, 60 feet, and 100 feet even, and we learned that 60 foot was kind of the max, just because every day those fish were swimming so fast. We're used to casting at walleyes that are in a big school and they're sitting on structure, or they're swimming but real slow, right? And you're throwing at a school of 15 of them, so as long as one sees it, they're all going to fight over it, kind of thing. Well, on Erie, these fish were swimming like you would hit them perfect right where they were. Your bait would hit the water. You'd see your bait going down. And by the time your lure got down 20 feet to where that fish was, you would turn the live scope and that fish is already 15 feet away from where it just was. So it moved 15 feet in about 5 seconds. So, and it kept on going. So they were a lot harder to get a bait on top of because these fish were all swimming all the time. And it wasn't like they're all going east. They all, you think that they're migrating east right now. That's kind of the consensus on what they do this time of year, but they weren't all swimming to the east. They were swimming north, south, every direction, right? And I'm sure it has to do with the current. They're probably swimming into the current, I'm guessing. But so yeah, we learned early in the week that 60 foot or less, and then kind of the minimum I would say was like 30-foot cast. If you were casting much shorter than that, you're almost vertical by the time it gets down to them, and it was kind of, you could catch them underneath the boat, and we actually that was a way we did get some big ones, and it shocked me. So these fish seemed like certain times of the day they'd be real aggressive, and you could throw it on their head and 2 hops and they had it, right? And then there'd be times of the day where they would track it for 50 feet all the way back to the boat. You'd be hopping it, they'd be following it down, following it up again, following it down, spinning around on it once it got below the boat. And you just kept jigging it and twitching it and making it look like a dying minnow. And sometimes it'd take a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and all of a sudden there he is. He'd finally eat it. So just amazing. That was another thing we learned this week. There were certain times of the day where they got a little temperamental, and that's when I would pick up that death jig and then just slow roll that in their face. And it definitely would get bit when the finisher when they got a little bit finicky with that. They just kind of got negative where they didn't want to chase it as much. Usually we could still catch them on it, but there was times where everyone you casted at would bite it, and then there was times a day where like every 5th one would bite it. And that's when that death jig worked better. But come tournament day, the death jig, I was catching fish on it, but I never got the caliber of fish that Scott got on the finisher. So,
okay.
But
that was kind of where I was.
That 1-2 punch. You know what I mean? It's nice. When you commit to one bait and one program. I never like doing that. You know, it's just like when you're in a trolling tournament and you put out 6 of the same color at the same depth. I can't do that, right? Like that just
Yep.
goes against my beliefs completely. So that's why I had to have the depth jig on, just to keep them honest. You know, if they quit biting that finisher, I knew I could catch them on the depth jig. So
Sure. That's what I was kind of getting at is, were you guys able to just basically vertical jig them and almost, like you're ice fishing them? I've done that up on the bay where you'll bring these fish in and then you just start ice fishing them. I mean, literally making these fish chase just like what we do ice fishing. And eventually, after 4 or 5 times of chasing, they're just like, I'm just going to eat it. And then they eat it right underneath the boat.
Yep. And they did. Yep. Absolutely.
That's awesome. So you got the boat from last year. What are you guys going to do with this boat?
We are going to sell this one.
Okay.
Yep. And it's kind of bittersweet because this one has a kicker motor and a lot of the things that mine didn't come with. So it's like I wish I could, take some things off of it and put it on the boat that I have, but it's fine. We're going to sell it, and then I'll be probably putting a new live scope on my boat and a few other things to kind of get it more tournament ready, maybe upgrade the 7-inch fish finders and that kind of thing. So it'll all work out. Someone's going to get a nice boat because it's a sharp looking boat. And I mean, it's set up to fish really well. So
why don't you just sell the one you have and then take that one?
Trust me, I've tossed it around, but we put it in Scott's name. So it's
okay.
Kind of complicated that way. And I love the one I have. I really do. And the one that I have is a FS Pro, and the one we want is a Cup. So the Pro model has a few upgrades that the Cup does not. So It's kind of, I can put zip wakes on mine, trim tabs, whereas the Cup I can't. So that's something I'm probably going to invest in as well. But,
okay. Well, you guys will get some cash from selling it, and then you can do the upgrades and get what you need.
Yep. Yeah.
Very cool. So what's next for you guys?
Well, for me, we do a Father's Day fishing trip up in the UP. We're going to go bluegill fishing, and I'm not keeping anything this year. I can't wait to throw every one of them back because I have more fish from Erie than I could probably in the next year and a half. So I'm going to be having some fish fries this summer, and I'm going to be giving out some fish to some family and friends, and then I'm going to Lac Butte Zaire 3rd week of June for a week to do that's a family trip where we take the boat and we're going to be on the water every day, tubing or fishing and just getting away. So I'll probably be heading out to the Wolf River. The kids want to try to get one of them baby northern minnows. So I might take them with the net one of these nights, see if those are out. I'm sure those have got to be about they've got to be hatched by now because the walleye should be hatched and going down the river right now too, I would think.
Yep.
And just getting to the river, doing fishing, go to the river, catch whatever bites, take them down to the local ponds and do some bass fishing and critter hunting. And with the rain, the kids are already begging me to get more night crawlers. So they keep me busy. Yeah.
Tell them I'll pay them for the night crawlers. I cannot believe how expensive these things have gotten.
Weston, he wants to sell them. So I'll hook you up. He'll be happy to hear he's got a buyer because last time he went, he's like, Dad, I want to sell these because he probably caught 20 dozen the other night, and
tell him to pick me a flat or pick what he wants and just text me. And I'd rather give a kid some money than whoever's getting it up in Canada or whatnot. So
yeah,
definitely.
Yep. And the ones he catches always catch fish. So they're good luck.
Perfect. If not, they're going to die trying, right?
Right. That's true. Yep.
Super cool. Well, again, congrats to you and Scott. It'd be awesome if you guys do a 3-peat next year, man. That would be that'd be the icing on the cake there.
That would be something.
Has anybody even done a back-to-back for the NTC?
Not prior to us that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah, and you guys did it without weights too, so that's pretty cool.
That's true, yeah. And then the guys that did my lie detector test in Erie, there was 2 of them, and they are actually the ones that caught the lead weight guys in Erie. They're the ones that did the lie detector test that those guys failed. And then the very next tournament, I guess they told the tournament director about that. And then that next tournament, the tournament director was planning on cutting their fish open all along. So they kind of had a hand in some of that. So it was kind of cool to hear their story, and they were very thorough with their, the polygraph, which is good. So,
So what kind of questions do they ask you for that?
So they'll ask you baseline questions like, are you in Ohio right now? Like, yes, so they'll have questions like that. They ask you to pick a number, and through one through 5, and then you tell them the number, and then they say, did you pick 1? No. And you're supposed to say no every time. And if you pick number 3, when they get to, did you pick number 3, you're supposed to say no. So then they kind of establish a baseline of you lying, what it looks like. They have they got nodes on your fingers, a blood pressure cuff. You're sitting on a sensor on your butt. And then you got like these chains that have sensors across your chest and across your belly that are sensing your breathing. So they have a bunch of, fancy equipment, and they're monitoring, your sweat glands and your heart rate and your blood pressure and your temperature. So
just so that alone would be nerve wracking.
Yeah, after you fish for 10 days in a row, and I didn't eat anything, so I did that lie detector test with no food. They gave me a bottle of water. I chugged that because I think I had 1 bottle of water all day, and just kind of wore out. But they did a good job, and it went fine. And then, so then they ask you obviously the tournament questions that matter. Did you manipulate your fish in any way? Did you and Scott catch all the fish? Did you follow all the rules and regulations? Did you break any tournament rules? So they have all those. The questions they're after are mixed in with all these other questions, the ones that they make you lie, and then the matter of fact ones like, are you in Ohio and stuff. So they do a good job explaining it ahead of time, so you know what's coming. And then it's, they ask a question, and then they sit there for 20 seconds or 30 seconds. It feels like forever. You're staring at the wall, and they're sensing, or they're watching how your body's reacting to how you just answered the question. And then 30 seconds later, they finally ask you the next question, and then you answer it and sit there and stare at the wall for 30 seconds. So it's something that I've never done in my life, and now I've done it twice. And just like that, it's like, crazy. Like I never envisioned it. So I'm happy to do lie detector tests anytime I can.
At the end of the day, if you didn't do anything wrong, you have nothing to hide.
That's it. Yep. Yeah. And I actually, I told them right away, I said, just so you guys know, because they had kind of a weird rule going out of Lorain. So it was slow and awake in the river. And then once you got to the mouth of the river where the pier had started to open up, from there, they had like another half pier out to the lighthouse. And in that medium in between zone, there was a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit, so you're going into it was a north wind at 10 to 15 blowing in. So you're in 3-foot waves, and you're trying to maintain 10 miles per hour. And
yeah,
we went over, I said we were 12 or 13, just so you know, we technically broke the rule or whatever. And I told them before the test started, I said, this is what I'm thinking about right now. And they're like, don't worry about that. They said legally that if you are safely controlling your boat, and that's what you were intending to do, which it sounds like you were because it was windy, he says that is perfectly legal. And I'm like, okay, good. Because, it's like, I knew the law was 10 miles per hour, and I saw us go 12 or 13 on the GPS, and it's like, and, all the other boats were doing that and then some too. It's not like, everyone was going 10 miles per hour and we were going 13 or whatever. So, think about it. You have a 300 boat tournament, and everyone's trying to get to their spot running out of the harbor. So,
it's impossible. You can't do it. Right. You can't.
If we would have tried to just go 10 the whole time, we would have had guys right up behind us, So, but yeah, other than that, I had nothing to worry about, and it went well. And the guys shook my hand, and yeah, it was all good. By the time we got out of there and had to bring Scott's boat back, that was 20 minutes away, and then 20 minutes back to pick up him. He stayed with the boat, and the one we won, and then drove him back. So we didn't get back till 9:30 at night. Still hadn't eaten anything. It was 9:30 at night, and I had about 50 messages, and I hadn't gotten back to anyone. I haven't even talked to my wife yet. It was like just one thing after the other with just the way they made the top 15 weighed last. And then once we weighed in, then we had the interviews and pictures and stuff, and then right to the lie detector test. And that was like an hour and a half test, where last year it was like 30 minutes.
Buckets.
Yeah. Which, like I said, I had no problem with. But just we got back, and it's like, okay, we were planning on getting up at 5 a.m. to drive home because it was Mother's Day, and I wanted to be home for Mother's Day because my wife was with the kids for 10 days in a row, right? Running sports and keeping them alive. So I felt kind of bad, but we didn't go to bed till I think it was like 11:30, and then we got up at 6 or 6:30, and then rounding everything up, all the fillets out of the freezer and packing everything up to head home. We didn't get on the road till 7:30. So I felt a little bad about that because I didn't get home till 3:30 in the afternoon on Monday.
We seen you come home when we were pulling into in front of my parents' house there, but yeah.
Yep.
So you take all this away, and what is the one thing that you're going to go away with from this tournament? A memory, or shoulda, woulda, coulda. What's the one thing that kind of really is going to stick with you on this one?
I think just how fortunate I am to have Scott as a partner. Just looking back, like, he's just like me. Like, I'm just like him. Just, we love to fish. We don't worry about anyone else or anyone else is fishing. We don't worry about, who's saying what about the bite. We go out there, we listen to the fish, and they tell us things. We listen and we expand on what we learn and dial it in, right? And we were getting up at 5:30 every day for pre-fish, and we were getting back at 7. We were cutting fish up. We were going to bed at 9:30. We didn't drink. We didn't go to the bars. It was fishing vacation. I all summer long, I'm with the kids. Don't get me wrong. I love fishing with my kids and my wife and my family. I love it, but it's a different kind of fishing. When I get a tournament, I get to fish with an adult that wants to fish as hard as I want to fish all the time. So I take advantage of that. It's a vacation. I could, you fish for 12 hours and it's like, okay, we got to put the poles down. We got fish to clean. We got to do this again tomorrow. Like, we don't want to, but that end of the day comes and we have to tell each other, okay, let's go. So just being able to do that, it was just a fun week. And then where we stayed, I mean, we had Mike and Lori, they treated us like family when we were there. So it was really nice to have that, to be able to come back and, we would text them, hey, we're coming back. And we'd barely be in and they'd have dinner for us.
That's awesome.
Just having that. I mean, we were so fortunate that, they had our back, everything was taken care of. We had a washer and dryer. We had meals cooked for us. We had everything we needed. And even Craig at the Erie Outfitters, we stopped in there. He's actually the guy that told me about Mike and Lori when I called him in January talking about, Lake Erie fishing. But we stopped in there several times throughout the week, and, he told us how he's been catching them and, where he thinks, where he would be trying if he was fishing right now. And, just general information, but information that ultimately gave us confidence in what we wanted to do anyways. He was telling me when I was talking to him in January, he's like, I got a hunch this is going to be one jigging. It may be Erie, but that time of year, he said he could see jigging playing in that tournament. So that kind of, in January already, it just gave me the confidence that, hey, we have a chance jigging. That's what we're good at. We're not going to go out to Lake Erie and out troll these guys that are in the Lute and all these other, local sticks that, I mean, they've got years of experience on that body of water this time of the year. We knew we couldn't shake a stick to any of that. So that's why we just fished our strengths and, got lucky that we figured out what we did. And the rest is history now. But yeah, that's what I'll take away from it. Just, being able to go on vacation and enjoy every minute of it. And then to come home winning. I mean, that was just icing on the cake. I didn't expect it, especially after being in 4th place after the first day. We didn't know where we would sit with what we had the first day. It was kind of like, we felt like we did good, but it's like, we knew we could have done better than that. So it was, and then to see fourth and we were down like 3 pounds, we were thinking, well, if any one of those guys ahead of us whacks them again, we really don't have a chance. And then the second day, getting that 10-pounder, then we started feeling again like, hey, maybe we do have a chance. And because it's not easy to pull 40 pounds a day out there. You know, there's a lot of fish in that system, but there are not a lot of 8+ pounders. There's a lot of 5.5 to 6.5 pounders. You know, and if you look at the weights, it kind of reflects that. That low 30-pound bag is a good bag. You know, that's a solid day of fishing out there. That's getting some good ones. So to get over 35, 38, 40, I mean, it's a lot harder to do than it looks, for sure. And we would have never done it without that live scope. There's not a chance, you know, just being able to pick out the biggest ones and put your bait in front of them to even have a chance to win. That's what you had to do for us.
Did you guys have any competition around you at all?
Yeah, so the first day, I think there was 9 boats, but they're primarily fishing out on the break, right? Where it kind of went from 22 down to 35 fairly quickly. And in the mornings, it seemed like those fish were really relating to that break. And those guys, we were getting nervous because we were fishing on the inside of them, the shallow side of them. And right away in the morning, every time I turned around, I was watching someone net one. And it's like, they got one, they got one. You know, and it's like, you know, Lance, you don't do that. You don't worry about everyone else. Quit looking at them. Just look at your live scope and catch the one that's in front of you, you know. And then so the second day there was way more boats and we couldn't even go out and fish because we had waypoints all along the break where we had got them. We couldn't even get to our spot because there was boats on top of it. So we got pushed shallow, which ended up being, you know, a blessing in disguise because that's where the really true 8+ pounders were is shallow, you know, in that 18 to 22 feet seemed to be where they really were. So, I mean, yeah, just fortunate how everything worked out, you know. I mean, we believe in karma. I always tell Scott that whenever, you know, I said, hey, karma comes around. And it actually happened to us that week. We were coming in and there was another group of anglers from Ohio and they had a Ranger and they had just put it on the trailer and noticed that they had a flat tire. And Scott brings the jack with, right? So we're there and I'm like, hey, you guys, you know, you need a jack. And because I could see him, he's in the back seat of his truck trying to get the jack that comes with the truck out to jack up his boat. And I'm like, we have one right here. So I grabbed it and walked it over there and they used it. And we chit-chatted with those guys. And, you know, took 15 minutes out of our day. We enjoyed talking with them anyways. They're super nice guys. And, you know, just that little helping hand, you know. It's happened to us. Scott and I actually, Mario Nana helped us the one time. We were up in Egg Harbor somewhere and we got a flat tire. And that's when Scott had his Lund. And so we're on the side of the road trying to fix it with the same thing with the truck jack. And he came and helped us out. You know, it just those little things, that means a lot. Like, yeah, that's, you know, that's what I want everyone to know too. Like, just treat people how you want to be treated. That's when it comes to fishing. There's so many guys that, you know, that the arrogance gets the best of them, and you know they win one tournament, you can't even talk to them. You know they think they're up here, and that's, I mean, we're all humans. We're all in the same sport. We love to catch fish. You know, there's no reason to think you're better than anyone. That's just how I feel about it. I've always felt that way, and you know I've been rubbed the wrong way by people that, you know, whatever. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm no better than anyone else in that tournament because anyone else could figure those fish out better than what I can. So, you know, just staying grounded and just realizing that, you know, I think that's another part of being successful because, you know, when you think you're just better than someone because your track record shows it, that's the time where you're going to get beat. That's how I feel. Yep. You know,
100% agree. Between that and guys shaming other anglers for, you know, I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, the last 2 weeks of white bass fishing, it's like, there's Asians, there's Polish, there's Russians, yep. There's all these resorts pulling 400 to 500 fish a day. They might not be posting pictures where everybody can see them. I'm friends with a lot of these Asian guys, and I've been invited to some of their private, you know, white bass group pages and stuff like that. It's like, oh my God. You know, if people would see these pictures, they go crazy. But you know what? First thing they do is they single out a guide and point the finger, and I'm going to kill every fish that's in the system. It's like, come on, guys.
Yep.
It's like, whatever. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And not worry about it. But well, awesome, man. I'm so excited for you guys.
Thank you.
Do it again next year, and I appreciate you coming on. And and we'll I'll get a hold of you here about that ice shanty too. And
Yeah, that's awesome.
you is it who's doing all that with the Freedom? Is that you, Chase, and
yeah, and Libby and Nick Thomas as well are coaching. So
okay. So that's pretty cool. I do some stuff here with Winneconne and Nina and Fond du Lac and a couple of the schools around here. I'm trying to get Watoma to get in because that's where my kid goes, and with all the budget cuts and everything else, they won't. Nobody wants to even do it. I mean, I've offered. It's just trying to get these guys to do something, and I've talked to the school administration team and. It's like, guys, we're in an area that is beautiful for a fishing team. We've got all these little lakes, and it'd be a huge success. There's so many kids in this area that would just thrive off of it, but it's finding the time and people that are willing to, take a couple extra hours out of their day, and it's just sad.
Yeah, I mean, it is a time commitment doing it, but I mean, I'm sure you would get satisfaction out of it. I get tremendous satisfaction out of it. There's a couple kids on the team that were just inspired by me winning a boat last year. They started fishing the Duck Creek Walleye Series this year, and they're loving it. They would have probably never even thought to fish tournaments. And it's like just getting to know them a little bit, and I inspired them to fish tournaments. It's like that's what we need. Like we need these young kids that wouldn't normally get to fish, or it just get that option in front of them, because with the tablets and the phones and the social media nowadays, it's so easy for kids to live in a
digital world
and not get to enjoy the outdoors. So that's why I love to share my passion with the high school kids, my kids, anyone that is interested in it, and I know you're the same way. You have the same passion, and it's just it's fun. It's fun for me to see them succeed, to see them learn, just to see the little things click. Like last year we were fishing, we went from perch fishing to walleye fishing, and telling the kids how to change their leaders and this and that, and just seeing it click for them when they got the perch thing figured out, and then they're going for walleyes, and then to have them catch one, and just to see how that once it clicks for them, it just you can see like the joy, and they're going to want to go again after you can do that. So it's, I don't know. I enjoy doing it.
You grew up watching this. I grew up watching this, admiring, the Gary Roaches, the Linders, the Cabelas and Parsons. And I mean, I idolize those guys. I mean, that's what I did. And that's what fueled me to do what I'm doing. And same with you. I'm sure when you were younger watching these guys, and now we're in the position to influence the kids, and that's an honor. There's no other way to look at it is if I get a school that invites me to come and speak in front of these kids, I'm dropping everything I can to do it, because I know how much it meant to me when people did that for me. And if I can give back and do the same, that's why we're doing it.
Absolutely.
Well, I will let you be, my friend. I know it's getting late. I got a trip tomorrow, and so I'm gonna talk a little fishing here once I get off with you. And I appreciate it. And please say congrats again to Scott. And
will do.
I'm sure he'll have you be his net man again anytime.
Yeah, he doesn't mind me netting his fish, so I'll keep doing it as long as I get him in the net. So I almost got fired with that last fish, but it's all good.
Oh, trust me, we all have that one fish.
Yep.
Well, I'll let you be, man. Thanks again, and we'll catch you later.
All right. Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Well, thanks to Lance. Congrats to him and Scott again for dominating out in Erie, jigging nonetheless. I mean, who would have thought that a guy could go out and whack on those fish, with a jig stick versus out there trolling? I know all the years I've ever fished, it was always a trolling bite, and not very many people jigged at all. You jigged in the river, in the springtime when they were spawning, but once you got into the main part of their summer patterns, it was pretty much just a trolling bite. So kudos to you guys, and congrats on that. As far as what's happening around here on the Bago system, my gosh, are the walleyes out on Winnebago. The bite is about as good as I've seen it in a lot of years. I think it's just continued. Probably one of the best spring bites I've ever seen and I've ever been a part of on this system. And going right back out into the lake has been just so much fun. And no secret, guys. I'm throwing hair jigs. We're throwing willow vibes and 4-inch scented jerk shads from Z-Man. Anything in that purple color has been really good, and just absolutely ripping the snot out of these things. Just make sure you've got good line, and every time we've been fishing out there now. Once you rip a hair jig, and I'm going to do some videos after I get done with this week guiding. I want to get back out on the Bago and do some videos on how to fish the reefs and whatnot. But, when you're casting these baits, rip them hard, and then just make sure that you feel your jig hit the bottom again before you go ahead and rip it. And what I've been doing is, when I rip it and I let my hair jig fall and hit the bottom, I feel it, or I can see it, in my line. Keep your line tight, and then just let it sit there for a second or two before you go ahead and rip it again. Because I think a lot of times, and I've been watching on the live scope, on the Mega Live, is, when I'm ripping these baits and they're starting to come back towards the boat, these fish, they do like a 90-degree turn if they see it, and they'll come over, and then they'll look for it. You'll rip it again. They'll finally key in on it, and they'll follow it. And as soon as that thing hits the bottom, it's like they swim up to it, and then they'll look at it. And the second you go and move it, bam, they're on it right away. So just have a little patience, and and kind of get used to making sure you feel the bottom, or obviously you feel the bite. But just make sure it hits the bottom, and you guys will catch some fish. The willow vibes, a great bait for kids. When you've got kids around and somebody that really doesn't know how to work a hair jig or can physically do it, the nice thing about these willow vibes, put a half a crawler on, or a piece of plastic, anything really that has some scent to it, and just cast it out as far as you can. Let it hit the bottom, and just either a sweeping lift and fall, or just a nice steady slow retrieve. Jake, the 10-year-old I had in the boat the other day, just would cast and just a real steady slow retrieve, and all of a sudden his line would just get tight, just kind of loads up, and he was catching them no problem. So very easy bait to fish, and very effective on the Winnebago system for certain. White bass, guys, there's still white bass that have spawn in them. They are not fully spawned out yet. I'm guessing, I would suspect that by the end of the week here, most of the fish should be spawned out. But I have never seen the fish like I've seen in the river this year. And they are everywhere. I mean, literally from the mouth all the way up past, Fremont, New London, into Shiocton. You can find schools anywhere you go. Some of the best things that we've been doing, casting fly rigs. That's, a pretty easy thing to do. We've been downsizing, going to like a number 7 or a 7mm, 8mm tungsten jig with just a fat head hooked through the nose, and just flipping it up to the shorelines. When you find these schools of fish, just flipping them up to the shorelines. We've been fishing by some seawalls and letting it fall down. And what you're doing is you're fishing by the docks, a lot of the docks, and you've got a flat that's pretty close to shore, and then it'll start to slowly, gradually go down into the main river basin or main river channel. And a lot of these fish will sit on those edges. and when they're spawning, and I think I had a make a live video you could actually watch. One female would kind of show up or get away from the group, and about 40 males would just kind of converse on her. And if you had that, all you had to do was flip anything up into there, and it was game over. They just attacked it. And I'm not using the live scope to catch these things. There's no need to. We've been just, find the side imaging, and once you see the pods of fish, after that, I've actually been shutting my electronics off, unless I want to show somebody what it looks like. But just to conserve battery and, listen to music, we shut the graphs off and we just fish. I don't even really watch them much anymore. So if you're looking for more white bass, plenty out there yet, and another week or two at least, because you still have all those fish that are up north that have to come back down, and lots of great fishing opportunities left for those. Bluegills and out on the small lakes here in Waushara County, these fish are starting to stage up in the shallows. I've seen some bluegills now starting to make a couple beds. This is the time of the year that I pretty much will leave them alone. I refuse to fish these things on the beds. I'll go out to the lakes and do some scouting. This is a great time of the year to scout if you're looking for big fish, because what you can do is every big male that's in the system is going to be making beds, and the bigger males are always going to be in that like 12 foot of water. Those deeper beds, 12 to 14 feet is what I find. And you can see them, and that's kind of what determines if I'm looking at all these new lakes or kind of seeing what the status of the lake is just going out there, and I'll take my underwater cameras and just kind of, cruise around, or, on some of the real clear lakes, you can just sight fish them and, sight see them or whatever. But I don't really beat up on them on the beds much at all. I let them do their thing, and, just there'll be plenty of time the rest of the summer to take some of these fish. I would love nothing more than to see, all these lakes go to a 10 fish limit, and even the 5.55, during the spawning season, to reduce the harvest of these big bluegills on these lakes. So, that's my kind of stance on fishing the bluegills and not on their beds. Is I pretty much leave them alone. Other than that, the Poigan, the trolling bite out in Poigan has definitely picked up. Guys are getting fish out in the mud on Winnebago 2 trolling. Again, not the troller. I'd much rather be jigging. And I've tried fishing some of the weeds out in Bago. I had one decent day where I was fishing some of the weeds up on the north end. Just, again, casting willow vibes, over the tops of the weeds. That's a great bait for fishing the weeds, because it does not pick up the weeds hardly at all. If you put a 3 or 4 inch tail on the back side of that, you can rip that thing to the weeds. If you feel it stop vibrating, just give it a quick little rip and the weeds will come off, and then continue just a nice, slow, steady retrieve. And then the other thing that's been working really good too, when you get into those weed bites, is throwing some chatterbaits. Any of the Z-Man little mini chatterbaits, like the crappie style stuff, the walleyes just devour those things. So, again, bass techniques for walleyes, stuff that I would have never thought of in a million years until I started paying attention to what these bass guys are doing, and, kind of cross-referencing and using the same stuff for the walleyes, and it's been very successful for me. So, that's what I know, guys. I'll report more later on in the week here, let you guys know what I'm finding. Tomorrow night, I had to do this tonight because tomorrow night I have my kids' last band concert for the year and would not be available. So I appreciate everybody tuning in and kind of getting off the norm. And we'll be back next Tuesday, and I'm going to try and see if I can't get one of the biologists actually from DNR, sending some notes out, trying to get a biologist on too. So if nobody has any questions, I'm going to leave you at that. And again, thanks to Lance for joining in, and congrats to Scott and those guys for the big W, and good luck next year in South Dakota. That's it. cheers, everybody. Have a good week. Watch the storms tomorrow. I think we're going to get some rain, some pretty nasty stuff, it looks like, throughout the day. So I might have an early day as well. But in the meantime, we're going to get out and whack on a bunch of white bass. And I've got an Asian family coming out with me tomorrow. And we're going to try and put some fish in the cooler. So cheers, everybody. Have a good night. We'll talk to you next week.